Hello everyone and welcome back. A lot of stories have been written for when the darkness falls, but what happens when the fog comes and you decide to step into it? Let's make the step together. So grab your flashlight and follow me into the fog. Number 1. One night, several years ago, I arrived home from the library and parked the car in the driveway. It was quite foggy, but the streetlights were on, so I went over to the mailbox before going inside. At that point, I was not a believer in true scary stories, but what happened next changed it all. While fishing around in my mailbox, something I saw from the corner of my eye made me turn to the right. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, as a strange figure of a man was at the other end of the street. It was strange because he was just standing there, and I assume was staring straight at me. My fight or flight reflex kicked in, and I quickly made my way to my front door, with hair sprinkling on my neck. I unlocked the door, turned to have a last look and nearly fainted. The figure was now at the end of the driveway. Something told me to go inside and lock the door. Once inside, I looked through the window and he was gone. I was trembling in fear and couldn't decide whether or not to turn the lights on, but I continued to check the window. I almost jumped out of my skin when the neighbor's dog started barking loudly. My blood froze as I heard footsteps. Hearing the footsteps approaching my front door, I gasped and ran to look through the peephole. The front light wasn't on, but I could see the eerie light from the street, which was creepy due to the fog. Barely breathing, I stared through the peephole and squealed in fear when a dark shadow appeared. I was sure that it was a man wearing a white brimmed hat, only inches away from the door. I flipped the light switch and went back to look through the peephole. He wasn't there. I raced around the house and turned every light on, while I called 911 and waited for them to answer. Then the phone went dead. In a panic, I kept redialing, but it was pointless. I didn't know what to do. I was shaking in terror as I crept into the kitchen and grabbed one of my knives. The dogs had stopped barking, and for a moment I thought that the shadow man had disappeared. Checking all the windows and slowly calming down, I went to my bedroom and sat down on my bed. Early next morning around 3 a.m., something woke me up and I sat bolt upright, straining my ears. The silence was so deafening, but my beating heart almost hurt with the slowly building anxiety. Then the lights went out. I screamed and then leapt out of bed when I felt a cold breeze on my face. I ran through the house and then the light suddenly came on again. I checked the windows. Nothing. I stayed up until dawn. I never saw him again, and can't explain what happened. Ever since then, I've been afraid of fog, the dark, and strange men. Number 2. My husband and I had moved up to Kentucky from Tennessee, and we were staying with my mother until we could get moved into our own place. She lives about 6 miles outside of the Morehead city limits on a road called Bluestone. We hadn't been there for more than a week when we noticed something wasn't right. We first noticed that we were tired and felt drained all the time when we were at Mom's, but we would feel fine as soon as we left and went to town or out to see some others of my family. Then we began to notice that Max, our dog, wouldn't go near the field after dark. That's when we started really paying close attention to the area when night came. There was always a fog around once night fell, but it didn't behave like a normal fog. First of all, there weren't any bodies of water around big enough to help create the kind of pea soup fog that would start creeping out from the ground on the far side of the field. It would always start from this one certain point on the ground, and then it would slowly creep around and spread out. One night, as my hubby and I were standing outside, waiting for the dog to perform one of his many nightly potty runs, we watched the fog start. There was a light breeze blowing, but this fog was moving against the breeze, and that put us on the alert. Then Max started making this weird huffling noise, like he was trying to whisper a bark. It was so funny that we almost laughed, but Max was shaking. He was frightened. My hubby and I looked up, and the fog had swirled its way very quickly over the field and right to the edge of Mom's yard. Then one of the most freaky and horrible things I've ever seen formed out of the fog. The fog in front of us started swirling, and Max started growling. We watched it form a ghost-like figure that had the appearance of a corpse. It had what looked like long, wildly flowing hair, and the face was skeletal, with sharp, pointed-looking teeth. The ghost or spirit formation in the fog looked like it had a dress that was ragged from rot. It tried to reach a skeletal hand towards me, but we were already running towards the front door, Max faster than either of us. We were shaking, trying to get a grip on what we had seen. I don't know if that was a ghost or not, but I know for certain what we saw that night. Number 3. You are a teenager, at home with your parents, living in a 2-story home in Iowa. On a normal night, you were still awake when your parents came to tell you they were heading off to bed, as they always did. Around 11 o'clock, you decided you needed to go to bed so you can wake up for school the following morning. Before you crawl into your bed, you look out your window and notice a thick fog rolling and bathing the countryside in mystery. A scary but normal sight for the region. After being asleep for 2 hours, you wake up to a tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. You expect it to be a branch from the tree in front of your window, tapping the wall, so you fade back into a dreamy sleep. But it does not last long as you think to yourself, there's that sound again. You look out your window and notice there is no wind, but the fog is so thick it appears as if your home was swallowed by it, and the usual sounds of wildlife completely vanished, adding to the thought of being swallowed and torn from reality by the monstrous fog. You head downstairs to the first floor on the left from a front door perspective, which is your parents' room, as you think maybe they're still up and making these sounds. You slowly draw the door back to peek in. You see their silhouettes in bed as usual. The mind-pounding tap, tap, tap beat their way into your eardrums. At this point you decide you must find the source if you ever want to get sleep. So you head outside, barely able to see in front of you. Your pulse quickens. A cold sweat of fear begins to master over your body as you search, but to no avail. The sound stops. You feel much better to get out of this nightmarish fog and finally get some well-deserved sleep. What you see next is something a veteran of war would gag at. Your parents dangling from the tree, hanging from their own intestines, chewed and clawed in blood, covering their body. No human could have done this. As you take this in and discover the tapping sound was their feet hitting the wall in front of your room, a more horrifying thought enters your head. The blood on your parents' corpses is dry. They have been here for a while. But you just checked on them. You get lightheaded and sick to your stomach. Your heart stops as you hear the creaking of the door of your parents' room opening. Hey there, thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, please leave a like and maybe subscribe to my channel for more, and I will see you all in my next video.